If God is real, I hope he can take a joke. I know Mrs. Parchinsky always used to say, perched on a table in front of a classroom of 36 kindergarten Catholics-to-be, you only have to walk through a zoo to know that God has a sense of humor. But this world is no platypus, Mrs. Parchinsky. We can't just laugh it off as some freak show token asymmetry when it's our reality that's bleeding hate crimes and nuclear codes. And I hope to God that he knows well enough to take it in stride when I let myself sound like I am his witness, as if I could swear on his written word that I have seen his weathered, smooth face. I hope he laughs at my contrition, my smirky, stumbling arrogance. The God Mrs. Parchinsky knew was like a well-polished poem. The fraying ends snipped neatly into squares, and every bit of anger smoothed into song-like syllables. I am who I am. But I want a God big enough to be invisible, slow enough to run from, lonely enough to love me. Who rips the roofs off churches to let the sun in, shatters hail before it hits the ground, who tears open the fragile skin of his wrist to bleed roses and rain. And I want a God whose footsteps echo in my fingertips, a God whose first language is music, a God who... Am I kidding? I want a God who doesn't exist. I want a God we can open and close like a jewelry box. A God small and round enough to organize into inch-by-inch cubes. I want him carefully sliced into bite-sized pieces. But I don't want a God who would take that shit. I want sobs wrenched from the shaky pinkness of my lungs by the God who paints dew on spider webs in the morning. I want my God to break me into 3 pieces. Bury one in his empty tomb, set one on fire and sling it into the stars and scatter the rest over your eyelashes while you're sleeping. I want him hiding behind and between the atoms of ordinary things and silently pulling the strings that make thunder sound, but I don't want him to push me any further. I want a God who will help me remember. Not the Red Rover rivalry of self-righteous religionists laughing as they link their arms as tight as they can, a sieve so narrow neither sinners nor sand can pass through. But the way I used to move when I knew he was watching. I want the God whose church bells reined me in last Sunday, whose words, smashed paper thin to fit into a leather-bound book, brought me back to that building whose ceilings used to make me feel so small. The God whose arms, extended in fatal embrace, brought me back to that old rhythm of my bones. My knees bent with the thoughtless fluidity of a Russian dance, angles and sinews running into each other like chords, and the next crescendo always half a beat away, like we were sitting in that moment just before the cup of molten love overflows and stains our fingernails with Alleluia, Alleluia. My limbs still knew the words to all my favorite hymns. And my lips were only a few seconds behind. My throat strengthened and hollowed in all the right places. My palms knew exactly when to find each other and when to extend to find another. The hairs on the inside of my ear bent over to let the steel sweet words in. For God so loved the world. My hands grew heavy with the weight of prayers too long unsaid. By the last amen, the congregation had returned to dust, and I was left alone with the rusted crucifix.